welcome to another edition of the World Cup Weekly Podcast from AFTV. I'm your host Giles, and with me tonight we've got Jasper returning. How you doing, Jasper? You alright?
Great, mate. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. We've also got Tim Payton from the AST. Tim,
hello.
Good evening, sir.
Hello there.
You alright? When did you get back from Brazil?
3 days ago.
Good man, good man. Did you get down to Wimbledon or the Lords or whatever?
Didn't get to... First year in many I've not been to Wimbledon, but I'll be at Lords next week for the India test. I'm looking forward to... It's been a lot of football, so I'm looking forward to some cricket.
Good man. And Andrew, you've been back from Portugal for a while now, haven't you?
I have, mate. I have. I've been at baby christenings all day, so forgive me if I snooze off at some point.
We're trying to keep it interesting. All right, so let's crack on. We've got the quarter-final results. Let's quickly crack on through that. I don't know, what you guys thought about the the Arsenal result, the France versus Germany game. It was 1-0 to the Germans. I'm going to start with you, Tim. What did you make of the game? What did you make of, in particular, the Arsenal players' contributions to that game?
Well, there wasn't that many on the pitch to make the contribution because the performance... Well, I was actually at the game in Brasilia, the round of 16 game, France against Nigeria, when Giroud played up front with Benzema pushed out wide. And in fact told you that that's a formation that's not going to work and shouldn't be pursued from our point of view. It was that game. He was really, really poor, I felt. Maybe it was just an off game, but as soon as France switched Benzema into the middle, they were much, much better. I hoped they'd be better against Germany. I thought they were a well-rounded squad, but they just didn't have the energy or the creativity to do much, and they kind of seemed to let it drain away a little bit. Kos didn't get picked either at all, did he? Although I thought he played well in the round of 16. But I was disappointed there. I thought France were going to come at Germany a little bit more and that they were strong in every position. But it was kind of like they were good in every position without having the standout player that could make the difference when it was needed.
Wasn't Kos playing from the start? Didn't he play
came on at the end, I think, didn't he?
Came on at the end, right, okay. Cool. All right, yeah. Jasper, what did you make of the game?
Well, I mean, the Germans were just, they were German, weren't they? They just kind of regimented and hard to break down and just very, very calm on the ball. And no matter what France threw at them, they just didn't really get ruffled. I think the French lacked a bit of creativity. They lacked a bit of attacking flair. And it's an easy thing to say, but obviously Robin would have changed that. Sorry, Robin, talking about Ribéry, would have changed that. So they missed him a little bit there. But they have enough players to hurt Germany, but for some reason they couldn't really get it together in the final third. So, if you're not at your best, then you're not going to beat Germany.
Yeah. Andrew, were you quite disappointed with France's display? I mean, going into the game, I thought they had what it took to sort of overturn the Germans, but they seemed to be inhibited.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I think, I was really disappointed with French, actually. I think, like what the guys have touched upon, they really lacked the creativity against Germany, which they'd showed in earlier games. I think, obviously, against Switzerland, they're full of like panache and they move the ball very well. And then even against Nigeria, less so with the panache, but they still were able to grind out the result, and probably what was their toughest game so far. And it's almost kind of a similar story to the French rugby team. You don't know which team's going to turn up. Is it going to be kind of, the all singing, all dancing, team, or is it going to be kind of this disheartening performance? Obviously, if you're not going to raise your A game against Germany, you're just not going to get past them. Although I do think that Neuer did have a good game. Benzema did have quite a few shots from inside the area, and Neuer has obviously been outstanding, probably the keeper of the tournament. Even though there's been lots of good keepers, he's been solid. I think obviously France, they just didn't really, even though they dropped Giroud and went for Griezmann to add a bit more pace and creativity, and even with Valbuena, they didn't really seem to penetrate Germany as consistently as you'd expect from the French team, to be honest. Yeah,
Joachim Löw seemed to play the right cards by dropping Mertesacker, who seemed to, their defence seemed to struggle against Algeria, didn't they? The high line pace behind their fullbacks. That was eradicated, the quarter-final game. Do you see Mertesacker coming back for the semi-final against Brazil, Tim?
I would have thought he'll keep what he's got there, the lack of pace that he has, unless you're going to put players around him to compensate that, which means you're starting to make decisions about what else is going on with your team. And it's an issue that Arsenal have to think about quite hard going forward, because, you know, with a right back who for years has known him, and also been very lucky in many ways that Koscielny was fit for most of last season, Arsenal definitely need the plan for who plays with Mertesacker if Koscielny isn't fit, and also the right back. We'll probably come on to that talking about France, the right back that plays alongside him. But, you know, Mertesacker is a great defender, but that lack of pace is the Achilles heel, and a team has to build around it and deal with it. And I don't think he'll go with that. I think he'll use the team that beat France.
Jasper, what did you make of Ozil's position in the wide position throughout this tournament? It's interesting that Joachim Löw's used him differently to what Arsene Wenger's sort of deployed him in the season gone by. Yeah,
it's a weird one, isn't it? Because obviously he's not a winger in any sense. But I suppose the good thing about putting him out there is that when he sees space, wherever he plays, when he sees space, he runs into it. So he's, if somebody looks up, they can pick him out in space, and it's probably easiest to do that in the wing than when you're in the middle. So that it plays to that strength that he has at least. But on the other hand, you know, you do seem to get so much more out of him in terms of assists when he's in the middle. So, and of course, you know that he's not the best at tracking back, so your left back's probably going to be exposed. So I don't think it's his best position, but you know, what do I know? I'm not the Germany manager.
Indeed. Okay. The second quarterfinal was Brazil 2, Colombia 1. Andrew, what was your take on the game? I mean, obviously the biggest talking point was Neymar's injuries out of the World Cup. Did you feel that Colombia gave all they had, or do you think they suffered a little bit from sort of stage fright or inferiority complex, or how did you see that one?
Maybe. I think there's certainly been you can levy a case throughout the World Cup that some of the smaller teams do have the kind of the inferiority complex against some of the bigger teams, and that certainly shows. But I think with Colombia, you know, it was obviously a fantastic game, very technically proficient from both sides, although obviously it did get quite dirty throughout. I think, you know, obviously Colombia gave a good account for themselves. I don't think Gutierrez is the guy to really be leading the line in Falcao's absence. I would go with Martinez myself. But I think obviously, you know, it was a fantastic game. I think, you know, it's certainly not the best Celestia we've seen in years. Obviously, you know, it's a shame for Neymar and shame for Brazil. He's going to be missing in the future, because obviously he is their most creative player, although I don't think he's as, you know, creative or as skillful as some of the players they've had in the last decade, which I've said on Twitter a few times and got a bit of abuse. But I do think, you know, Colombia certainly gave a good account for themselves, but they were beaten by the better side, and it's just a shame that, you know, obviously Rodriguez was kind of, he was, you know, targeted from the start by Fernandinho and by Paulinho, and then obviously Zuniga was kind of running around thinking he was, you know, Mr. T at times, just absolutely hammering people, wasn't he? So it kind of that detracted from the game a little bit. But you know, by the by, I think it was probably one of the, if not the most exciting game of the tournament so far.
Yeah, Jasper, what did you make of it?
It was a great game. I think I couldn't see all of it because I had to have one eye on my son running around smashing things. But yeah, I think my impression of it was that, you know, Colombia were great in attack, but they just almost tried too hard, rushed the chances, rushed the decisions, and they needed a bit more composure in the final third, because they had the attacking players to score, but when it came down to it, they were just kind of rushing it a bit, whereas Brazil looked a bit more composed, and that was the difference in the end.
Tim, you was over there recently. Just how big is Neymar? I mean, they say he's the poster boy of Brazilian football. You know, you was there with a lot of the Arsenal Brazil fan club. I mean, how big a name? How important is Neymar, or was Neymar, to Brazil?
Oh, hugely. It was sort of carrying the hopes of the nation. Every single shirt, it was his name on the back. Every single advertising poster, it was him. Kind of think David Beckham at the sort of height of that popularity cult, but much, much more magnified, partly because he's a better footballer. and partly because there was Brazil hosting the World Cup. Also, he was a player who, relatively speaking, stuck with Brazil. He only transferred to Barcelona last year. I think he turned down 2 or 3 moves, and although he still moved out of the country fairly young, it was significant that he stayed and played some of his football there, which only added to the sense of pride and sense of feeling that he was someone really committed to his country. And there was so much resting on him, and you only had to see how they went from kind of jubilation to national mourning in the space of about 15 minutes the other night when they realised how serious the injury was. I think, the president, she's already written to him, and it's just going to have a huge impact on their psyche. What we have to wait and see is, are they going to kind of, out of adversity, come together and win it for him? Is it going to pick up the other members of the team, or will they fall away without that sort of creative talent that was at the heart of all they did? And we won't know the answer of that until the game is played. I think missing their captain as well, you tend to think it's too much for them to overcome and get through that semi-final. But having been over there and seen how much this means to them and how much they put into staging the World Cup, I'm not going to join in this sort of, I sound this strange, I can't imagine supporting Germany in anything, but I'm certainly not going to be supporting them in the semi-final.
Okay, your heart says Brazil. Does your head say Brazil as well then?
No, it doesn't. I do think that the ruthless efficiency of the Germans, they're good in every position. They haven't got that real creative star player up front, but they are strong in every position. They know what they're doing. They probably won't. They'll be least phased out by this national fervour that they'll pick up in the ground and from the crowd, and you all see what the anthem is like. So I suspect that they will probably get a 1 or 2-0 victory and shut up shop and force Brazil out. But I hope not. The final that would just be unbelievable for atmosphere and what it would mean down there would be Brazil against the old rivals Argentina. That would just be some watch next Sunday.
Indeed. Andrew, Tim touched on Brazil being, the wily old horses. They're not fazed by, the partisan crowd and so on and so forth. Our own Lucas Podolski came out, I think yesterday or today, and said, Brazil have got Neymar, Argentina have got Messi, but we're very confident in the strength of our team, and that's such a typical sort of German sort of psyche, isn't it? It's a very typical sort of German confidence, bravado. Well, not even bravado, but just that assuredness that they know that they'll prevail. How do you see the semi-final going?
Yeah, I think I agree with Tim, and I think Germany have the most complete. I mean, I said it before the tournament. I think Germany have the most complete squad. They certainly have. Obviously, I know they don't have centre forwards, or when Klose doesn't play, and their defence could be improved. But I think if you look at their first choice 11, it's probably the most balanced, or it's the most overall qualified of the remaining 4. Obviously they've got so much strength and depth in midfield, and if England were missing like 3 players like Godonje and Lars Bender and Marco Reus, we wouldn't hear the end of it. And they've still got so much strength and depth. And players like Drax has barely even had a look in. I think that the Germans certainly have the ability to close the game out. Whether Brazil do obviously take and carry favour from having the crowd. They seem to the crowds for Brazil have been fantastic, and they really have been getting behind the players. But I think once you remove Thiago Silva and Neymar out of the squad, and you're left with Fred and Hulk up front, and the defence obviously is going to be pretty deplete. It looks like it's going to be the national Mannschaft in the final, probably against Argentina for my money, which I think will be a fantastic game. And I think Podolski's right to be full of confidence. The Germans, they're again that kind of classic mode. It's a tournament team where they're growing step by step as the tournament goes on. And for me, that they're looking the best team, or the most solid so far throughout.
Jasper, last time they met in World Cup competition, Brazil done them 2-0 in the final. Albeit Brazil had a lot more strings to their bow. They had the outstanding player of the tournament, Ronaldo, with Rivaldo, supported by Rivaldo and Ronaldinho. Without Neymar, is there, looking objectively at the Brazil squad, do you expect someone like Oscar and Holt to sort of step up and fill in for where the void left by Neymar?
Well, they'd have real big boots to fill, haven't they? I mean, he does leave a big hole when he, in his absence. So they're not at his level. Hulk was brilliant in some games. He's used his strength and dribbling skills to break into the box and penetrate, and it was really exciting. But he can't do it in every game. And Fred, I haven't seen, do that much. So I can't see them replacing the creativity and skill that you lose with Neymar. So, I worry about them. They'll play with lots of passion, I'm sure. The crowd will be behind them. They're the host nation, and they'll have a great team togetherness. But the Germans will probably be calm and efficient and confident and just go out and do the job like the machine that they are,
Yeah.
So I think it'd be very difficult for Brazil to win. The German defence is solid. The attack is pretty good when they play with a striker. So I think there's it's not impossible for Brazil to win because some of these games, especially these quarter-final games, have only been won by one goal. Sometimes that's all it takes. Brazil score a goal and then manage to defend it for the rest of the game. It can happen, but I think it's unlikely. So it would be a bit of an upset if Brazil beat Germany 2-0, I think.
Do you think a little bit of the World Cup has gone now that Neymar has been, injured and out of the competition?
Well, for the Brazilian fans, it has, yeah, because as we said, it's the poster boy. But also,
but for the rest of us,
yeah, for the neutral, we love watching him play, don't we? So, yeah, some of it has gone out, but there's only these 3 games left now, really. So he's only going to be missing from one of them. So he's not spoiled the whole World Cup on his own. But it's a shame. It is a shame. You want the best players to play right to the end, But we still got Messi and Higuain and all these other great players. So. I'm looking forward to these remaining games.
Okay, let's move on to the Belgium-Argentina game. Again, there's another case of the young upstart sort of freezing in the headlights, isn't it, Jasper? Belgium coming to. I mean, they didn't really dazzle throughout the tournament, but they had the players you thought that would at least cause a lot more concern for Argentina than they actually did. Hazard, for me, hasn't really shone in this World Cup. He's not been the player that Chelsea fans had led us to believe, has he?
No, I mean people always say, make this complaint about England that why do they play so fantastically well for the club and then they can't do it on an international stage. But it's not just our players that do that. Hazard has not been the player that he is in the Premier League, and you could say the same about a lot of Premier League players. But Belgium, you look at the lineup, it's always the same thing. They flatter to deceive. They've got these great players, but they just don't knit together as a team really well. Similar to England in some ways. You look at the lineup, you think, look, these are good names. These are stars of the Premier League, and then they sort of play like they've never met each other before. Belgium aren't that bad, obviously, but they don't play as well as they look. They're going to on paper. And Hazard is one of the culprits, definitely. I mean, even Company's, wasn't as good as he is for Man City. So, yeah, they just didn't have enough on the day, and Higuain's, sort of natural born finishing instincts killed it off.
It was an absolutely brilliant instinctive strike, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting, Andrew, that the player that made the mistake in the lead up to that goal was their talisman, Belgian talisman, Vincent Kompany, who all Man City fans have told us all season is the best defender in the world, isn't he? What did you make of the game?
I thought it was an okay game. It wasn't obviously one of the classics of the tournament, but I think obviously. Another sad thing coming out of the game, obviously, we've talked a lot about Neymar and Neymar's injury, but it seems there's been some media reports that Angel Di Maria is going to miss the rest of the World Cup. And I think, equally that's going to be a huge loss for football and for the remainder of the World Cup, because and obviously he wasn't at his best against Switzerland, but he's also had a fantastic tournament so far for the RGs, and I think it's going to be a huge shame for them to miss him in midfield, because they really do lack that kind of central midfielder who's just going to pass the ball around. I think Argentina obviously are looking good. They've got their frailties at back. But what really annoys me about the Belgium team is, obviously I know they've got a lot of plaudits and a lot of people can see the Premiership names in their squad and get very excited about them. And I think obviously you touched upon how they don't really seem to play together as a squad. But I just don't get why they continue to do what was clearly a mistake at Man United and put Fellaini as a defensive midfielder because and obviously he's tall and strong, but I don't know where down the line someone decided to put him there. But he's clearly an awful holding midfielder. He's just so technically deficient in those areas. His tackling's not up to scratch. He doesn't man mark very well. He doesn't drop back into like an auxiliary centre back role. Obviously he plays very well as kind of a second striker. Or, he's obviously got the elbows. He makes a nuisance of himself, and he's just so destructive to play. So obviously Witsel was suspended. But obviously Dembele can play deeper. They've got players that can play them. I think they really could have given themselves a better account of themselves if they just had a little bit more tactical nous there. And that might be their inexperience, or it might be obviously because he's got such a big presence now in the squad and he's one of their kind of talisman. I feel Belgium could have offered more for the quality in the squad they have, and throughout the tournament I've been pretty disappointed with a lot of their finishing, a lot of their shooting. I don't think as you say. They've played particularly well as a squad. They don't really seem to be playing nice through balls for one another. The movement's not quite there. And for a team with one of the arguably the top 5 squads there, they really haven't done as good or as well as what I'd have hoped to have seen them play. To be honest.
Tim, do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I'm still expect more from Argentina. I still think that they've got the creative players that. I'm hoping that we're going to get a really great final, Argentina against one of the other two. And I think there's more to their squad. And people, you only really remember the team that wins it and 1 or 2 moments from the tournament. And we've still got the semi-finals and finals to come. So it's a little bit too early to have absolutely made the judgment. And that's where I'll put my prediction now.
Okay. Do you feel that Messi has got a better supporting? I mean, Andrew said that apart from the defence, they seem to have a lot of. I know Angel Di Maria's gone, but they seem to have quite a few players that they can slot in that can actually support Messi better than what we've seen with Brazil. Do you see Angel Di Maria's absence as a great hindrance to them coming up in the semi-final against Netherlands? Or
well, he is one of those players with pace and skill that can just make that difference. So obviously to lose him isn't good. He's got a little bit of that Theo Walcott element to him, which is even when he's not playing well, he makes the other team have to just set up and operate slightly differently. But they've still got some very good players in there. And a bit like, it's why I predicted at the beginning Germany against Argentina, it's the solidness of the squad. It's really good, strong players in every position. And then you just need 1 or 2 of the flair players to come to life. I think we were all expecting to see more out of Aguero linking up with Messi and some of that team, but he's clearly not fit, and perhaps it's a big call, for the manager there about, who he uses, and it was the same watching Spain with Diego Costa in. I mean, you could see, I was in the stadium for 2 of those games, you could see from 100 yards that he was carrying a hamstring injury, and it wasn't as fit as he could be, and I get the same feeling watching Aguero, which much made a difference. But there's so much talent in that Argentina team. I think there's more talent, it's got more unpredictability, more skill than the German team have. And so if they can unleash that, I expect them to win the final, which won't go down very well in Brazil, but it'll be quite entertaining while watching the television pictures to see how they react to that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you've already written off Netherlands' chances. Is that because RVP plays for them, or?
No, I do. Partly because I just think that the effort that they went through emotionally and physically to then turn that around again, in such a short time scale, added to the fact that they've got 2 or 3 very, very, very good players, which obviously can make the difference on the day. But I don't think there's just enough quality in their 11 when you put them up against an Argentina.
Okay, Jasper?
Yeah, I mean, he's hit the nail on the head. You look at the Argentina attacking lineup, and there's just an embarrassment of riches, really. Whereas, you know, with Holland, you know, you've got Robin van Pissface and you've got Robin, you know, one or two others, and that's it, you know, and they're talking about a team that, you know, couldn't score in, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours against Costa Rica. No disrespect to them because they were brilliant, but, you know, a better attacking team would have scored at some point. So, you know, coming up against Argentina, I see them as the weaker team.
Interesting. Andrew, I suppose what's your assessment before I preempt what you're going to say? The Netherlands.
Yeah, I mean, the Netherlands have got an all right squad. I think that, you know, if you're going to rely on Ron Vlaar and centre back against Messi, you're running up, or you're running uphill. I don't think he's, you know, particularly great. I think, you know, Blind isn't particularly fantastic. I remember, you know, it reminds me of his dad. You remember when England crushed Holland back in the 90s, and he was just in the middle of midfield and he didn't, you know, what was going on. I think, you know, obviously they lack a lot of experience at the back, but they have played as a unit. I don't like how Van Gaal's restricted Schneider's game so much. You know, he did that to Riquelme back in the early noughties at Barcelona, and you know, obviously he's kind of pinned his hopes on Robin and Van Persie to do the job there, which, you know, they haven't particularly performed too well together since the Spanish game. You know, like Tim, I think I'm going to go for Argentina on that game. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how Argentina, you know, how they set out in midfield now without Di Maria, because they haven't really taken, you know, an experienced playmaker with them. And obviously, you know, people will say Messi's a playmaker, but I mean in the orthodox sense of, you know, someone who's going to sit in that kind of number 10 role like Riquelme did for them in 2006. You know, he was probably the best passer of the ball at the 06 World Cup. You know, obviously he took a lot of players around him who weren't natural passers, and, you know, created Argentina into this, you know, flowing team. And without Di Maria there, and I know he's not, you know, naturally a passing midfielder, but you think, you know, they could, you know, come and suck there. They could lack a little bit of creativity where they're very dominated and they're very heavy with dribblers. And, you know, that's why I think it's a shame they didn't take someone like Pastore to the World Cup, because I think, you know, with someone of that quality and that kind of vision, they could really quite easily unlock that Dutch defence, which don't look, you know, they look like they're there for the taking, to be honest. Obviously, you know, Robin's very quick and obviously he's, you know, he's a hard worker, and Van Persie can be lethal when he wants to, but yeah, for me it's got to be Argentina.
It's interesting you make the point about the number 10s, because in all the four teams that are there in the semi-finals, Germans, they're playing Ozil, you know, as a wide attacking midfielder. Brazil don't have a natural number 10 now. We've got, you know, Netherlands. Schneider's been inhibited, as you said, and you know, the who else is it? The Argentina. They don't have a number 10. It's interesting that most of these sides they're all athletes, aren't they? There's a lot more power in the game, whereas before in the 80s and 90s we saw a lot more dribblers. There's a lot more sort of, you know, your classic sort of Platinis and you know, and Zicos and that sort of player. Robbie's just come in, so I'm going to put the question to him. Robbie, how are you, mate?
Hi, not too bad.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. We're just talking about the lack of classic number 10s at this World Cup, or at least at this stage of the World Cup. What have you made of the World Cup and how it sort of played? I mean, it's been a great World Cup until now. I mean, I suppose a lot of people were saying that about the group stages. In the knockout stages, it's been a bit sort of, you know, itsy bitsy. But have you sort of wondered about the lack of your sort of classic Platini sort of player, or your classic even Zidane, you know, or Riquelme?
I mean, yeah, you're right, but it's been a brilliant World Cup. I've got to say that first and foremost. These stages were bound to be cagey. I mean, it's do or die now, isn't it? So. You saw with the games yesterday that teams just want to make sure they get across the line no matter what. So, you know, yes, there aren't those classic number 10s there, but there's still some very good players in this tournament, and I've enjoyed it immensely. Okay.
Can you give us quickly your predictions for the semi-final? So, Brazil versus Germany. Who you got going through?
I've got Brazil going through.
Really?
And why? Yeah, I've had Brazil from the start of the tournament, and I'm sticking with them.
Right, because the other three, I believe... Jasper, you said... What was your prediction for that game?
For the Brazil game,
Yeah.
I thought that Brazil would lose.
Right. So the other three have said Germany because they haven't got Neymar, and Germany being Germany, they'll prevail.
Yeah, but
so why do you think Brazil?
I just think Brazil, they've got that will behind them. They've got the nation behind them. I just think they're going to get through. I think I've listened to a lot of the pundits really criticise Brazil. I think real over the top criticism a lot of the times. Listen, it's not the Brazil of old. It's not samba football all the way, but they've got it there to get over the line, and they won the last game really effectively. Neymar didn't do a lot in that game, or even the previous game, and they won those games. And Colombia are a very, very good team that have probably been playing better football than Germany in this tournament, and they beat them. Chile, top team, they beat them. I know it was on penalties, but they got across the line. So I think a lot of people are kind of underestimating Brazil, thinking that it's only Neymar. Sorry, I think they are a decent team. They've got players that will step up. And, I just fancy them to go all the way. They'll get little decisions here and there as well because they're playing at home. And, yeah, I fancy them to beat Germany.
Which players you reckon will step up then in the Brazil team now?
Well, I think, they could, with Neymar out, possibly they're going to have to possibly move Oscar maybe into the middle, or they could possibly bring in Bernard. I just think overall, we saw it the other night. That free kick by David Luiz, what a fantastic free kick. I just think they're not the Brazil of old, as I said, where it's going to be, apart from Neymar, but individuals of superb brilliance. But as a team, I like their work ethic. They haven't conceded a lot of goals in this tournament, remember. And I just fancy them to do well. Even though I think Thiago Silva will be a big miss, but then they've got players like Dante who can step in. He's a very, very good replacement. So, I think a lot of people are writing off Brazil too soon. And I just fancy them. I fancied them since the start of the tournament. And I think they've played good teams all along. I think people are forgetting that. Apart from Cameroon, every team that they've played has been a very good team. Croatia, Mexico, Chile, Colombia. So I don't know. I fancy them. I fancy Brazil to go all the way.
Okay. What about the Netherlands and Argentina game?
I fancy Argentina in that one. I think we're going to have an all South American final, Brazil versus Argentina, which I'd love to see. Netherlands, very good team, but I think I think every team that's sort of at this latter stage, even though you may say even with the Germans as well, they sort of been reliant on a single player. So Arjen Robben has been carrying Holland. You see last night, even though I thought Schneider had a good game, but it's Arjen Robben's pace running with the ball that's made the difference for Holland. And I think coming up against Argentina in South America, Messi I think will step up. I don't know. I just fancy that. I just fancy Argentina to beat Holland in that game.
And the Barra Ultras will be there out in force, won't they?
They'll be there out in force. Listen, these things make a big difference. They make a big difference in these games. And I wasn't overly impressed by Holland last night against Costa Rica. And in the end, they were very lucky not to concede in the second half. Even though, listen, they did. To be fair to them, they did have most of the chances. Well, nearly all of the chances. But I don't know, even Robin van Persie, he looked a very aging player last night. He looked out on his feet. Maybe the amount of games that they've had in the tournament sort of caught up with him. And if you can shackle Arjen Robben, I think you can beat Holland, definitely, because they're a good team, but I think Argentina are a better team.
Okay. What have you guys made of... I was watching the game last night, this Costa Rica Netherlands game, and all game they're saying, whatever happens, Costa Rica have had a great World Cup. It's almost patronising, bordering on condescending. No one seems to want to give Costa Rica their due. Okay, we all thought they were going to be whipping boys in the England group, but they prevailed coming out top. Greece, I suppose, Greece was, it wasn't that much crap. But I mean, you got to give the manager Pinto so much credit for organising and setting out his team the way he did. The tactics were spot on, were they not?
Definitely, better than our manager.
Tim, let me come to you.
It's not hard, is it?
Tim, let me come to you. I mean, the Costa Ricans, surely, I mean, I was saying the other day that purists were saying that we shouldn't open up these championships to the smaller nations because it dilutes the World Cup, the competition as it is, in its sense. But you got teams like Costa Rica that sort of, ripped the form book up. I mean, what do you make to that? I mean, are you one of the purists that think that, it should only be, I don't know, was it 16 teams or whatever? Or do you actually, are you happy to see these smaller nations come in and sort of, equip themselves much better than a lot of the traditional superpowers?
Oh, absolutely. No, it should be a World Cup open to all from around the world, and it's part of its charm, and part of when you're over there, you feel it even more because the pride that the fans have from these countries. It was similar with Bosnia as well, their first ever World Cup, and it didn't go that well for them. But you look at the scenes back home and at the games they were at, Costa Rica were another. All of the South American countries, actually, the fan base was fantastic and brought noise and colour. And ultimately, you've got a qualifying competition and then the matches themselves, and the teams will live or die by their performances. What we are seeing, which I think is a slight shame but inevitable, is the kind of homogenisation of world football, a standardisation of tactics and approach. Maybe 20 years ago you could have watched a team, if they'd have all been kind of in a kit with no colour and no names on the back, you'd have probably been able to identify the bit of the world they were from after a while. But now, I think Champions League football and the way all the nationalities are blurred, do you get this feeling that you very much see a much more homogenised product, and how the organisation of teams and the tactical approach is just replicated. But people who have known about international football, the bit that when the World Cup comes around, particularly the Euros have it as well, it's because it's not actually about money, in the sense that a country can't buy itself players. So you don't get, the Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, or as we see over here, the consolidation of talent. It's a kind of open game, and it's just the national pride that teams play for, and the fact it does go back to that identity. And just look how the Americans played, under that sense of identity and wanting to make their sport bigger in their own country. It adds a magic and an ingredient which still makes the World Cup by far the greatest football competition to watch in the world.
Jasper, what do you make of the supposed smaller nations acquitting themselves so brilliantly in the World Cup?
Well, it's fantastic, and I think that when teams like England, Spain, and Italy and so on got knocked out, it was great because you think, blimey, these are sort of big European nations, but that just gave these smaller nations an opportunity to actually show us what they're made of, and they really did that. In previous tournaments, you wouldn't have imagined these teams getting that far, probably because they'd always come up against a Spain or an Italy. But with those guys getting knocked out, they just went for it. They really went for it, and they showed us how much passion they got. They fought till the death. Some of those games, they seem to still be sprinting at the end of extra time. So, where they found the energy from, I don't know. But it's been brilliant to watch teams like Costa Rica. Although I do agree about the homogenisation of football is sometimes a bit dull, watching every team play tactically a similar game. But, the passion right from the beginning of the World Cup has been brilliant. Every team has really gone for it. Nobody's tried to kill the game or, park the bus. Everyone's tried to attack. So that's why there were so many goals in the beginning. It's been great to watch these teams show us what they got. America, Colombia, Costa Rica, great fun.
Indeed, and it's probably added to the luster, the appeal, hasn't it? You know, more people. It makes it more intriguing, much more interesting for new watchers or newcomers to football to watch.
That's right. And if you think about it, you know, next tournament, if a big European nation like England, France, Spain comes up against somebody like Costa Rica, you know, right in the beginning, they're going to be taking them seriously now because they know how far they got last time. You know, whereas before they just think, oh, tiny nation. You know, we're the big boys. It shouldn't be a problem. But you look at what they've done, all these so-called small teams. You have to take them seriously now. You have to sit up and take notice.
Indeed. Andrew, Tim first, and then Jasper now has made a point about the homogenisation. Everyone seems to be playing a sort of similar tactical kind of game of mostly counter-attack or speed or whatever. It goes back to the point about number 10s, I suppose, in part. What did you want to make about? What point did you want to make about number 10s?
Oh, no, I was obviously on the earlier, but I was just going to say that there have been 4 good number 10s to me. Hector Herrera for Mexico, Matthew Valbuena, James Rodriguez, obviously, has been, and obviously Sanchez for Chile. I think on the homogenisation piece, yeah, I mean, certainly from a lot of the major teams now, you see, you know, extremely similar tactics throughout, and obviously, obviously you look at the systems they play, it's very similar, whether it's going to be 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, similar, and I guess, you know, a lot of the bigger teams use it as a way to maybe counteract the strengths of the others. And that's why it has been nice to see some of the smaller teams, like kind of Algeria, for example, have really prevailed this tournament. Chile, for example, you know, they've shown that, you know, if you implement the correct system, then you can really prevail. I think some of their players, probably don't play to the full strengths of their creativity, for example, because they kind of curtail themselves to make sure that they play within the system. And sometimes that's a sign of an extremely intelligent player to know when to move and when not to move. And that's kind of what we used to see from the older Italian teams. I think obviously Mexico have been fantastic to watch as well this tournament. So, obviously I get the point about homogenisation, and I think, and as I say, certainly with the bigger nations, you don't get to see kind of the different styles so much as what, you probably used to years ago, when kind of you had the all-out attacking flair of Brazil against maybe more conservative European side like a Germany, whereas now both of them kind of have far more balance, which, detracts from that excitement to some extent. But then it really does, amplify when a Costa Rica or someone comes out of the woodwork. You can take a lot more pleasure from it, and so that's certainly been excellent. I think also excellent to say, just a shout out to Bosnia, obviously, Bosnia-Herzegovina. They've had their first tournament, their first major tournament, and obviously, getting that under their belt, their first goal. So hopefully, that will help them push on in future major tournaments as well.
Okay, so before we wrap up the World Cup section, referees, they're going to have to have eyes at the back of their head in these semi-finals. I mean, on the one hand, you've got Argentina and against Robin and his constant diving antics. Do you think that he will be, the refs will pick him up? Because I think Pinto, the Costa Rica coach, made a point before the quarterfinal game about, referees being, on their guard and watching for a player like Robin who does seem to sort of go down pretty easily. Do you think this will be a determining factor in the World Cup semi-finals, guys? I mean, do you think that we're going to see a lot of? I mean, Brazil, they go down at a touch of a feather or anything like that. I mean, do you think this could potentially mess up or deter or detract from the spectacle of a semi-final? We'll start with you, Rob.
Well, yeah, it might do. I mean, listen, just before I make that point, just going back to your other point, I just want to say that any argument about smaller teams not coming into these tournaments, totally redundant. Especially anybody in the British press that says it. We were in the same group as Costa Rica, yeah? Remember that. And they went through, we were bottom. So, and you see teams like Algeria. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was thinking, would England have beaten Algeria? Would England have beaten USA? I'm not sure if we would have done. So it's great to see these smaller nations come through, and I think it shows that football's improving around the world. On your other point with Iron Robin and the Brazilian teams, as I said to you before, I think the Brazilians, they will get decisions. It always happens when teams are playing at home in a World Cup, you get decisions that go your way. And you're right, the referees are going to have eyes in the back of their head. Players will be going down. They'll be trying to win at all costs. We saw it last night, even with Tim Krul, when he was trying to, when the Costa Rica guys were stepping up to take in their penalties and he was sledging them. Everybody's going to do what they can do to get through to the final. So I feel a bit sorry for the referees because they've obviously been also trying to sort of make the game flow. They've obviously been under instructions to do that, but in a way they've kind of made it flow a bit too much and made some fouls. Some people get away with some bad fouls where, it's then sort of turned it into real niggling affairs in some of these quarterfinals that we saw. So the referees are really going to have to be on their game. But unfortunately, I think, yes, you will see some people like Robin dive in and things like that to try and get an advantage because there's so much at stake.
Tim, we saw in the group game, the first group game, Pepe getting sent off for hardly, I suppose his head moved towards Frank Muller or Thomas Muller, and now we're going to see Thomas Muller up against Fernandinho and those guys, and they got off pretty lightly in the quarterfinal. I thought a lot of the Brazilian guys, their tackles were a bit tasty, and so on and so forth. Do you think the referee will be able to sort of, keep a handle on what could be a sort of, a really sort of explosive game?
We've got two issues. One is the referee good enough? And I don't know who's been appointed, and you do see varying standards. And then secondly, you get what influences are being applied to the referee. They've clearly been on a directive to be more relaxed with yellow cards and to allow games to flow. And I actually think as a trade-off, that's one of the reasons why it's been a very enjoyable World Cup. Games have flowed more. Perhaps at the quarter-final stage, that caught up with one or two of the games and there was too much physicality and it was allowed to get away too much. What we don't know is whether there'll be a bit of a backlash to that. Particularly, I sense the mood in Brazil over the Neymar injury, although ironically they did probably more of the kicking than got kicked. Will the referees intuitively pick up on that and be stricter and be more firm with the cards and how they clamp down, or will they keep going with the approach? We'll have to wait and see, but I do applaud on the whole the slightly more relaxed. Previous tournaments have been littered with yellow cards and the games kind of have been too over officiated, and as a balance I'd rather it was slightly too lax and the game flowed rather than fussy and stopping all the time.
Indeed. Can I just ask you quickly, you guys, Louis van Gaal has been hailed in some quarters as a tactical genius, and in other quarters he's been ridiculed as, just being lucky. I mean, they only beat Costa Rica, after all. Andrew, what have you made of his decisions throughout the tournament? Not just last night's, changing of the goalkeeper, but, as early as, I think in one of the group games, or maybe the last 16 game, I think he took out, I think he brought off an ineffective Robin van Persie, brought in Klaus-Jan Huntelaar, who effectively won them the game against Mexico. You go back to the first game where they were losing to Spain. I don't know if he tweaked it or whatever he done, but they ended up 5-1 winners. What do you make of Van Gaal? Is he being overpraised? Is he being overhyped, or do you think he actually is as good as he says he is?
See, I've got a very, very mixed opinion on Van Gaal, and it goes back a lot longer than the World Cup. As I kind of mentioned earlier, really, really disliked him when he was at Barcelona. I thought he went out of his way to ruin Riquelme and ruin Quaresma. And then obviously he went to Bayern Munich, had, loads of money to spend, but only won the league once. Obviously he failed to qualify the World Cup with Holland back in 2002. So I think, but then you look at his win ratio, and it's like in the 60% range. So, he's obviously doing something right. I think, he has got some, very big tactical calls correct. And he is obviously a very astute, experienced manager. Although sometimes I think his over self-confidence can sometimes be his own downfall, as we've seen historically with him, in as I say, past roles as management. And that obviously could be a downfall for him take him outside of competition football, put him into the league, and obviously these kind of changes might be less effective or less they might not be as successful because you need to make these changes over the course of the season. So I think he's certainly the kind of guy who likes to blow smoke up his own arse, and to some extent it's justified with especially the switch in the game when Holland pulled it back against Mexico. And he made the the change after 75 minutes. But and obviously he's got the best set of players like Gaal, who I think's played every position this tournament. But yeah, I think he is getting a little bit slightly overhyped, and people are taking out of context a lot of mistakes he's made in management, and a lot of errors of judgment, and kind of they're isolating those. But he is obviously tactically astute, and he does know what he's doing. So I think he's going to do it very well at Man United, unfortunately.
Jasper, what's your take on the Van Gaal factor?
Oh well, I don't have a lot to say on him really. It's one of those things, you make a sub and he scores or whatever, then you look like a genius. But people forget about the subs that you bring on that make absolutely no difference. They don't get talked about, do they? So, it's a big. There's already a massive spotlight on him because of the job he's about to do. So anything he does now has been blown out of proportion, and it's all about that really.
Tim, do you have anything to add on the Van Gaal situation? Do you think the media sort of talked him up a bit too much, or?
No, I think it's going to be really lively. I think he's going to add entertainment and colour. What he clearly is decisive and full of opinion and attitude. And I think, who knows, it's either going to work fantastically for Manchester United or it could all really blow up. I suspect, though, what worries me slightly is coming in off a good World Cup, and even if he goes out in the semi-finals, it's clearly a good World Cup to take your team that far, and the image that has come across will give him a bit more authority, just in the game, but at Manchester United in the dressing room. So from our point of view, I think we could have done with him not having a World Cup where he looks strong and he looks tactically aware and he's going to arrive, with on a roll. But it's going to be, put Mourinho, him, others around. He is going to add colour, isn't he? He's going to bring it all to life.
Robbie, is it essential that Netherlands not only get knocked out, but they get hammered, get their asses served to them, so he doesn't come into the Premier League with his balls hanging out?
That would be good, but I think, listen, he has had a good World Cup. You got to hand it him. I personally say you got to hand it for him for last night. I mean, that was a massive call.
And against Mexico, he made.
Yeah. I mean, last night, if that hadn't worked out, he would have looked an idiot, and it did work out. So you've got to praise him for that. And like Tim said there, he's decisive, which is what we need. We could have done with that as an England manager that's decisive as well. We haven't got that. We've got England manager who will continue to play Rooney no matter what. Even if he had to play him in goal, he'd play him. I think if it was Van Gaal in charge and Rooney was off form, he'd leave Rooney out. If Van Gaal was in charge of England, he may have taken the decision after the first game to possibly say to Steven Gerrard, I'm leaving you out. I mean, I don't know, but he just seems a decisive manager, and what he did last night, I think that had the Costa Ricans spooked. They must have been thinking to themselves, why are they bringing on, this has never happened before, why are they bringing this guy on? He must be a super expert at saving penalties. It obviously got into their head. Then on top of that, he was doing the sledging. And, yeah, I mean, you've got to hand it for Van Gaal for what he did yesterday. Unfortunately, yes, he looks to be a very good manager. He has got a good track record. Although, like one of the guys just pointed out, this is not going to be competition football. The Premier League, he's going to be up against some very, very good teams this season, so it's not going to be plain sailing.
Tim, do you reckon Tim Krul's got a bit of Australian in him or something like that? I mean, the sledging was classic sort of, David Boone or Merv Hughes stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there. It's kind of not a new tactic, though. I mean, one of my first memories is it's slightly different, but you remember the Bruce Grobbelaar antics on the line?
Okay, the cup final, European Cup final.
Wasn't it? He was using more kind of buffoonery and just distraction. But, I don't think that this is a first, and certainly players winding each other up and what they say to each other. Well, we saw the impact that had on Zidane at the World Cup final 8 years ago. but he took it a little bit too far, maybe. But they're all doing that all of the time, and it's been around for a long, long time in the game.
Cool. All right, let's move on to matters closer to home. World Cup's nearly finishing. Wenger said that our transfer season begins once the World Cup draws to a close. There's loads and loads and loads of talk of well, Alexis Sanchez seems to be old news, unless you go by what the people have been doing a good bit of photoshopping on the Arsenal.com website. There's loads of talk about Mathieu Debuchy. Apparently come out on French TV after the game against Germany and said, I will be joining Arsenal. Tim, I'm going to start with you. What news have you got?
Well, I was with one or two at times in Brazil with one or two of the people who'd be close to things and who would know, but that's not to say that I got told in any way. The two players that I tweeted about from Brazil, and there's, I suppose, a bit of a clue here, were Alexis Sanchez and Sami Khedira. Because I just felt the vibe, the noise around them, it made sense of the kind of deals that we'd want to do. I actually think we need 7 signings, and I'm a bit worried that it seems quite narrow in where we're going. Clearly, I mean, I think it's widely known now that they want Alexis Sanchez. Couple of not doubts here, but a couple of things to watch out for. I think Juventus are probably a larger threat than Liverpool. Don't forget he played in Italy before. I don't know whether that gives him a stronger or weaker feeling for the league or the language, but Juventus, as the champions, as a huge club in Italy, as a league he was in before, does he have this image like Rodriguez, which is that the Premier League is a bit too physical for me? I don't know, but that would be my nagging doubt there, much more than Liverpool. And another just question mark to throw out there, but I think this is the way the world goes and you have to accept it. But I'm always slightly nervous about taking players who are being kicked out by a club and don't want to go, and the mindset that they might arrive in. And I think, you could see a little bit, I think Ozil is still, in some ways, getting his mind around the fact that he was kicked out by Real Madrid and he had to go somewhere that he didn't want to go, and the adaptation. And we're seeing that issue happen again. But, I think that's the way the world is going to work, particularly with those two clubs in Spain, the way they go through players. On the right back, and again, I'm not sure there's anything we can do about this, but this guy is only a year younger than Sanya, and he's going to be given a contract that's going to take him up to the same age that they weren't happy to give Sanya a contract by. And if Newcastle charge what I understand they want, we're actually going to spend more on him if you take contract fee, agent fee, and wages we'll pay him. There's no saving on having given Sanya the contract in the first place. So maybe there's a slight lesson learnt for Arsenal there. But I'll hand over to you guys and come back in if anything else comes up.
Can I just ask you that? Can I just stop you one? He's 28.
He's 29 in a week.
All right, and Sanya's 31.
Yeah.
Well, just turned 31. So I suppose I think it's 20 months when I looked.
Right.
20 months difference. So yeah, there is something there. Mm-hmm. But you see where I'm coming from. It's not.
Yep.
The argument was that you put your money into buying a younger fullback and then you get the value of it there with you. And he will be getting a contract from Arsenal, but I don't think would be on offer if he was an existing part of the squad.
I'm gonna I know Robbie wants to come in and talk, but let me go to Jasper first. Jasper, Mathieu Debuchy, do you think that would be a good signing? Do you think we should have gone for Aurier? What's your take on the right back situation first of all?
Well, I don't know Aurier as well as I know Debuchy, but Debuchy is a decent signing. I think he's probably another one of those right backs that's better in attack than defence.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then Sanya was kind of the other way around, and it always used to annoy me a little bit that he couldn't cross very well, and never really tried to beat his man down the wing. So maybe I personally will prefer Debuchy more than Sanya. So, but not if he keeps conceding goals. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. He seemed to do all right for Newcastle. And Aurier, I think, am I right in saying he would have been gone for the African Cup of Nations anyway? So Debuchy is a better bet in that sense.
Mm-hmm. And the Alexis Sanchez situation, do you think? I mean, Tim just said, and I've seen it on Twitter, on Twitter earlier today that he's supposed to, or his representatives are supposed to be over in Italy speaking to Juventus. I mean, should we be unduly concerned?
Yeah, of course we should. I mean, look how we lost Higuain last time, to an Italian club because we pissed about and they didn't, so we should always be concerned. But I've actually got a different mentality this window to the last few summers where, I used to follow every little whisper on Gooner's World and on Twitter, and there'd be a whisper about a player I'd heard of, another one I'd never heard of, and I'd go and look them up on YouTube and start getting excited, and it always ends in disappointment. So I'm actually ignoring all media for the entirety of the transfer window. So I haven't even really watched Sky Sports very much, and if they do mention anything, I'd completely ignore it. So I think that's the best way, is to just not get your hopes up on anyone, and then you won't be disappointed, because the last window, obviously with the exception of Ozil, was so disappointing that I don't really want to go through that again. So I'm just going to fully expect that the window will close and we'll get somebody 10 minutes before it closes that's a bit underwhelming, and leave it at that,
Andrew.
Yeah, I think Debuchy, he's a relatively good signing. I don't think he's kind of potentially obviously he's very good, but I'm not sure if he's world class yet. I think obviously it will give him the stage to prove himself. I think at Newcastle last season, I think he got himself sent off quite early in the season, but he started off very well for the first 6 months, and then after that he just looked pretty disheartened at how crap the team were, to be honest. So I think he's the kind of player who looks like he's certainly ready for the fresh challenge. I think obviously Arsenal, would be the ideal club for him. We need an attacking right back, as you've said, and he's obviously looking for Champions League football. So I think it makes sense, given that he's Premier League experienced, and obviously as you and I know, and a few others, obviously, as we said before, Aurier was never really in the mix, to be honest. As I know a lot of people were saying, why aren't we going for Aurier? Why are we looking at Debuchy ahead of Aurier? But I mean, Aurier is only in the mix because he put himself there. The club, as we kind of found out from FK back in a couple of months ago, he was never really a serious question for Arsenal. Wenger's never really been too keen on him, we heard. And I think he obviously has unfortunately had quite a good World Cup. So I think obviously Debuchy might be one that we've scouted now for a little while. I guess obviously that Premiership experience will allow players like Jenkinson potentially to develop still without having a kind of a gripe on his back. Obviously, I know you mentioned it, Tim, that he's nearly 29 now, so maybe it gives Jenkinson a little bit more kind of confidence that he will kind of take that right back spot when Debuchy's coming to the end of it.
That would only work if Jenkinson is now put out on loan, because Jenkinson does not develop sitting on the bench.
Well, isn't there talk that he might go to Newcastle in the other direction on loan for a season?
So. Because it's absolutely no point. I think that lad, if you add up the number of games he's played, he's started less than 50 first-class games in his entire career. Because when he came to us, he'd only played about 7, and that's just not enough. You need to play and play and play to learn your position, get familiar with the game, pick up the experience. So the argument about how it, some people say things like, oh, it's a clever signing because it will allow him to come on. Well, it won't. He needs to play 30 to 40 games in a season. He needs to get in the rhythm of playing every week. So put him out on loan, but then that probably means finding somebody else. And the other issue we definitely have with this signing is he's no centre-half, is he? He's no cover like he was for that position. And given that I fear very much, because it's how Wenger operates, which is to go with a player's request, I think that Vermaelen will be allowed to go to Manchester United, and therefore we need 2 good central defenders now to sign, and that's a big task to get done in this window, and you don't see any ideas or names popping up at the moment. Perhaps one will come the other way from Manchester United, although they have a need for central defenders as well. So I think that it's probably the best of the world we ended up in, but I feel that we will pay the price of not being able to have kept Sanya next season.
Robbie.
Well, I think Debuchy's a good signing. He's got that experience. We've got to remember he keeps Sanya out of the French national team, so he must be a good player. I remember when he played against us last season, I was really, really impressed by him. So I think that's a good signing, and I kind of disagree with him. I don't want to see Jenkinson go out on loan because then we won't have any cover. You know what we're like with injuries.
Oh no, well I would.
He gets injured. Then what? You know, Jenkinson, he's going to have to fight for his place. He's going to have to earn his position in the team. Openings will come for him. Opportunities will come for him. I know what you're saying, Tim. You know, obviously Debuchy will be the main man, but I think he might get more of a look in than when Sanya was there because Sanya was just so reliable. So, yeah, I like the signing of Debuchy. I think that'd be good. Alexis Sanchez, if we could get him, that'd be another fantastic signing. I think there's definitely something in that. I'm pleased that Tim has said that he'd heard stuff about it as well, because he does get a few things right there, Tim. So, you know, and the other one that Tim mentioned, what I'd love to see happen is Khedira. I think just as important as a striker this season is that defensive midfield position. It's where we lost a lot of games last season. It's where we got overpowered and outdone by Chelsea's and Manchester City's and teams like that. And if we can get somebody in there of that sort of standard of Khedira, that will make a major difference to Arsenal. I mean, I'd love to see a midfield with Khedira and Ramsey in there. I mean, it just solidifies what's going on there. So if we could sign Khedira, and I agree with Tim, it's not just one or two signings. We do need quite a few signings. I think we even if we get Sanchez, I'd still like to see us get, like, say, Loic Remy. We need Khedira or somebody to play in defensive midfield. And we are going to need, like you said, right back will be Debuchy, but we are going to need centre-halves because I, like Tim, think that Vermaelen will leave. He's only got 1 year left on his contract. He's going to be calling all the shots, and if United want him and promise him first-team football, he's going to want to go. So we're going to need two centre-halves, and remember, we need a goalkeeper. So there's a lot of business to be done by Arsenal in this transfer window, and it has to be good.
And there's also the fact that Van Gaal and Vermaelen worked together at Ajax as well, isn't it? So there's that pull as well.
I mean, I've been linked with the centre-half from Holland, Veltman, who's also plays for Ajax. We've been linked with him in a centre-half position. I mean, we're getting linked with everybody. They all know that we've got loads of money to spend. They all know the positions that Arsenal need to fill. So we're getting linked with absolutely everybody. But the one deal, and I'd like to ask Tim what he thinks about it, because as I said, Tim's good on these transfer rumour things, is the Alexis Sanchez thing. Do you think Arsenal will get it over the line? Because it is a complicated deal. Like Tim said, he may opt for Italy because Juventus, they're the top team in Italy. He played over there for Udinese, so he's very familiar with Italy. But do you think it's a deal that Arsenal will get over the line, Tim?
I think we are the favourites. Who knows? There's two issues. Most deals get over the line with money. And that's one of our problems, because we have a manager who will, have a view on money and how far he'll take it. In effect, you have to outbid Juventus with both transfer fee and salary, and that gives you a huge head start in terms of opportunity. But the only reason you can't totally call it, the player does not want to leave Barcelona. We know that. There's been a little bit of digging the feet in, but he's probably been told he has to. He's
going to have to leave, though, isn't he?
He is going to.
Suarez coming in, and they've got Neymar there, and they've got...
Exactly.
Where's he going to play? He's going to have to leave.
Exactly. So he's going to want to probably have a look around the clubs he's going to, talk to the manager at the setup, have a think about it. Probably it's going to come down to where he feels he most wants to go. I hope it's us. I think we've been, I picked up on this interest almost before it had picked up. I think it perhaps goes back to an expectation before the World Cup as someone that Arsenal wanted. I do think I'll throw in, I could keep the debate going for a long time here, but I think it may well spell curtains for Podolski, because I think that coming in from the left, pacey, can score goals, is the position that where he would fit in most, and he certainly works harder than Podolski does in a squad, and we know the manager doesn't like that, but perhaps he would strengthen and so on. We've got a good chance, but I don't think you should ever count chickens through Arsenal and transfers.
It's interesting you say about Podolski because, I mean, I don't know how strong the rumours of Remy are, but if we get both Remy and Alexis Sanchez, then Podolski really is on the outside looking in. And then we've got Joe Campbell coming back, you know, who's going to be tried out over the pre-season. You know, it doesn't look very rosy for someone like Podolski, does it?
It doesn't, and I think, you know, in August the 31st on his way for Podolski, in a way I'd be encouraged if that happens, because it would mean that we'd done good business, you know, in the weeks before with the names that you've mentioned. We still need to, I think. Sanchez is not your automatic Oliver Giroud step up or replacement, as we all know, and I still think we need that out and out centre forward, but there's probably not one available. That's a challenge, so this is the next best way of working around it. I'll also add, I would be disappointed if Joel Campbell comes back into our squad. When you've got £100 million to spend, you can do better than that. I mean, it's because he's been there to watch. You actually look at his first touch. You look at his movement. It might be good enough to play Carling Cup games for Arsenal, and I watched him carefully over there, including once in the stadium where you get a slightly different view to the TV pictures, and he's clearly got more than Sanogo. But I don't think that is Arsenal being ambitious if he comes back as our number 3 pick striker when you've got £100 million in the bank. There are a lot of players out there a lot better than him.
Okay. Jasper, you want to make a comment about Barca?
Well, it's just sort of slightly going off on a tangent now, so feel free to look back afterwards. But I just wanted to say that, you know, if they get Suarez, they're going to have Neymar, Suarez and Messi. How's that going to work? I mean, who are you going to bench? You can't play them all, can you?
I suppose. I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
are you really going to put Messi on the bench? I don't think so. You're really going to put Suarez on the bench? You spent whatever they're going to spend, 90 million, and then they spent 90 million on Neymar. You can't, surely no one can have a £90 million player on the bench.
I suppose that's their problem for them to sort out as long as we get Sanchez.
Well, I don't care as long as we get Sanchez, but it just seems a bit odd. I mean, a lot of eyebrows were raised, but even Cruyff mentioned it, you know, when they got Neymar, because they thought, well, you know, then you've got 2 players, both with egos, both wanting to be the star attraction. How's it going to work? But then if they get 3, I think, you know, they're stockpiling players and they're stockpiling players. I mean, that just seems insane.
I suppose they've got rid of Fabregas and they're getting rid of Sanchez. So Fabregas was playing the false 9, wasn't he?
It looks like Xavi's off as well, doesn't it? Xavi might be off, so I don't know, maybe you'd have Neymar on the left, Messi on the right, and then obviously Suarez down the middle.
I think they're clearing the deck so that they can accommodate those 3. That's what I think. But Tim, you made a point about, you know, a proper striker coming in, and I've been saying this for some time now.
So true.
I don't think we'll have enough to see us over the line to take the title. We need a striker that can score us 25 goals, not in all competitions, in the league alone. That's my personal.
I agree, but I don't think that there's necessarily one out there. At the event with the Arsenal executives just before I went to the World Cup, and they said with quite confidence, we've got no problem spending £50 million on a player in that position. We've got the money and we're not scared to do it. But then the question was posed, we're not sure if there is one available this summer. And I think that's a fair point. You know, they're quite a rare species. And I think that, you know, looking at someone like a Sanchez is about how you kind of almost fit around it. Because you tell me who, you know, Suarez was clearly the one last summer, and we don't need to go back over quite how we managed to screw that one up and where that ended up. But he was the one. It was the one that was available. He was partly available because there were flaws in his personality, which we've seen. But you tell me now who the classic number 9 who gets you 25 to 30 goals is. Benzema was the one that was, I thought, you know, if Real Madrid had gone after Suarez, I thought it might have been Benzema.
I actually think a striker like Lowe. I actually think that Sanchez could be turned into a striker that could be similar in fashion to Aguero and similar to Suarez. where he could get you a lot of goals. He scored 19 goals last season for Barcelona, and I think he could be turned into. I think Loic Remy could get you 20 goals as well, and I think there are strikers out there. I think there's Mandzukic, who is probably too similar to Giroud, so probably that's why we wouldn't go after him. But he could get you 20 goals for a season. There's players like Jackson Martinez who's been banging the goals in over there for Porto. Now, yes, it would involve taking a chance, but, you know, that's what Liverpool did when they bought in Suarez from Ajax. So, you know, I think, and plus as well with Arsenal, I think collectively you'd see a lot of goals scored amongst, you know, remember there's still Theo Walcott to come back who scores a lot of goals, and across that sort of front three you'd get a lot of goals, but they definitely need backup for Olivier Giroud, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, some people have said, you know, we've got if the executive are saying we've got no problem, why don't we just say, all right, go to Monaco and say, okay, how much you want for Falcao? Because you know, like Rodriguez wants to leave, doesn't he? I mean, Monaco isn't your hotbed of football activity. I know they got a Russian billionaire, but they hardly get £5,000 a game. You know, it's not. I mean, I know they're going into the Champions League, but you know, I don't know. I just get a feeling that maybe your top strikers are rarely available, but they are available if you put money down.
And there's certainly strikers available better than Giroud. I mean, it's interesting that they didn't go for, if they didn't feel there was anyone available this summer, Tim, maybe why they didn't look at someone like Diego Costa early before Chelsea, you know, put their kind of gauntlet down. Then obviously that's kind of one, you know, the obvious kind of top quality striker move in this summer. I know you didn't expect it to be great.
I still don't believe that we are a club that operates with that mentality, you know. And by that, I mean, if you're going to sign Diego Costa, you've got to have a relationship with what's his name, Mendes, the super agent. You know, not wrapped up. We're not networking and in the links of these super agents and kind of aggressively out there. You get the feeling that it's all kind of more technical, more thoughtful, in some ways more passive, isn't it? Oh, what's left for Arsenal? Oh, how can we make it work around what's out there? Look at how, you know, some of the other clubs have been kind of clearer and firmer in who they want. And part of the problem is you get the sense that, you know, we're not in that mix. And then you've got a manager who wants to weigh up their value. And then he is quite indecisive in the transfer market anyway, which we'll go, him, or what will it add, and think about it a lot. And there's some strengths in that, but we still don't operate at the top table of world transfers. Yeah,
I agree with you, Tim. We're not aggressive enough in the transfer market, and that's why we see targets disappear all the time. I agree with Tim 100% there. We need to be more aggressive, a la Chelsea. You know, they just identify it. I know they've got a lot of money, but we have at the moment too. Identify the targets and go after them aggressively. And we do seem to be that very indecisive, and that's why we miss out on so many targets.
When was the last time we won a transfer tussle? You know, a player that we wanted was also really wanted by another club. Now let's hope we might be about to see one with Alexis Sanchez. If, you know, it looks like Juventus and Liverpool are after him. But, you know, I can't remember the last time we used our firepower or our appeal to get a player that someone else wanted.
Can I answer that?
Go on.
Was it not, well, obviously it's a joke, but it was Park, wasn't it? I think the story was he was in a taxi, he was going to go from Monaco to Lille, he was Gervinho's replacement, and we got him last minute.
You could say, in all seriousness, you could say Ramsey, because he did go and you know, see Fergie, didn't he? And he was shown round by Gary Neville or something, and then we flew him and his family out to see Wenger, who was commentating on the World Cup or the Euros.
I believe that was on the Danny Fishman private plane. But what's that, 6 years ago?
Yeah, it's a while.
And
even that's not
signing where you impress a young player, a developmental player, rather than you take a star out of the market. But
even at that time, he wasn't an elite player at that time, was it? I think what Tim's trying to say, more elite players. Ramsey's turning into that, but at the, you know, like you said, if we get the Sanchez one over the line, then maybe we might have seen a change. And I think it's important to get this Sanchez deal done because it will show people that Arsenal are serious players and maybe will strengthen us in the transfer market. But certainly the most frustrating thing as an Arsenal fan is to see sometimes the dithering by Arsenal in transfers. So many targets, Eden Hazard, etc., that we've missed out on because, to me, we've been indecisive.
I think it's not going to fly as well with the dithering if it's because we're putting down, low ball bids. It's not, it's not justifiable and the fans won't swallow now. We try and use outdated economics to try, and apply that to, the current players in the market, because ultimately we've got such a significant portion of money there to spend. Clubs know this, it's public knowledge. We can't just, constantly try and get players on the cheap anymore. And, if we are going to want to have one of those top number 9s or a top 10, we're just going to have to pay the price. And, if we want to compete for the league and we want the silverware, that's the price we have to pay. And that's, why supporters, we pay big transfer.
Absolutely.
Ticket money.
The player's value is what you have to pay to get him. If you can't afford him and you're balancing a tight budget, then it makes sense that you weigh things up carefully. But I just don't see the logic in saying, it's £2 million too dear for us, and then shutting the window with £70 million left in the bank. I just don't see how that has any logic at all.
Also, the board, if the board is saying that, sorry, but there doesn't seem to be many out-and-out strikers on the market at the moment, well, whose flipping fault is that? Because last summer there seemed to be loads of them. They are a rare breed, but last summer, Suarez was available for the right amount. Jovetic we missed out on. Higuain we missed out on. Falcao was available. All these people were there. They got bought. They got transferred. So, if we'd started early and put our money down and made a decision on who we want, rather than going, we're going to get Higuain, but look, Suarez has come available. Oh fuck, we've lost Higuain. All of that dithering. There were absolutely loads. Now there's less, and they're of a lower ability, but they were there. That was the time to get them.
There's still some now. As I said, you've got Jackson Martinez for one, who's been banging those goals in. Right, you can make it a comparison with him and Luis Suarez in the fact that he scored loads of goals over the last 2 seasons. We know it's a Portuguese league, but Suarez was banging them in over in the Dutch league, which a lot of times people look on and think, well, now we could try and take a chance with somebody like that and bring them in and maybe turn them into a superstar as well. But are we aggressive enough, and are we prepared to take that chance? That's what we need to see, because even if we get Alexis Sanchez, I agree with what the other guys are saying, we still need another striker. And me personally, I wouldn't mind Loic Remy. I think he would be a good signing. Or somebody like a Jackson Martinez, or there's a Mandzukic out there. There are strikers out there, I think, that Arsenal could bring.
I just think that a Loic Remy is a step down from Sanchez. Why would you bring in a Loic Remy if you've got Sanchez already? You've got Walcott on one side as well. You've got Alex Chamberlain, who brings his own qualities. Why would you bring in a Remy as well?
Because he's played in the Premier League. He can score goals. He's proven in the Premier League. He's always scored goals everywhere he's gone, and we need more strikers.
But how many games do you expect him to get? How many goals in how many games do you expect him to get, Robbie?
Yeah, but
he's not going to be a starting striker.
Every top team has more than just 2 strikers. Every top team has 3, 4 strikers. At the moment, we've only got 2. We've got Giroud, and we've got a young kid, Yaya Sanogo, he's probably the player that needs to go out and learn and learn to trade a bit more as well.
Yeah.
We need, I think if you added Loic Remy and Sanchez, then you've got Giroud and Sanogo, that's fine. But we need 4 strikers. That's
Remy is great backup.
That's what Chelsea have got. That's what Man City have got. That's what Manchester United have got. Right? Why are we surviving with just a couple of strikers?
I suppose what I'm trying to say is, if nothing else, and Robbie and Remy comes in with Sanchez, fine. But I would rather we go out and get a proper striker.
Yeah.
Forget Remy. With a proper striker, you've got Giroud, proper striker, Theo Walcott, Alex Sanchez. You don't need a Remy.
Well, maybe Sanchez might be that proper striker. They might be thinking that they can convert him into to playing similar to Aguero.
Yeah. He did it at Udinese. He did it at Udinese.
It would be. I think we had a debate, didn't we, with some kids? Debate. We said it'd be nice. I think we bring in Sanchez and Remy. You're bringing in 2 players who don't obviously they're not, obviously Sanchez is much better, but 2 similar in the sense that they both will want to take up perhaps but a kind of wider position, or they'll play off a number 9. So, obviously with Bentner leaving, with, Shamak gone, Park gone, it kind of only leaves Giroud as the only one talisman up front, and obviously Sanogo, but it'd be nice, obviously, for him to go on loan as well. So I don't know why, obviously, bring in Sanchez, but then I'd rather we brought in someone like Immobile, obviously, or, Soriano, or Martinez, someone who can play that kind of orthodox 9 role.
Lukaku, there's players out there. If we are prepared to spend the money that we said that we've got, there are strikers out there that we can get, right? All right, they may not start every week because they may not be the main man, but we're going to need, Liverpool have gone and got, a couple more strikers in. We need 4 strikers.
I agree. I like Remy as well, actually. I do think he's a good finisher, and he's got trickery and pace as well. I wouldn't want him to be the only striker we buy, but I certainly wouldn't complain if he's added to the squad.
How about Luca Toni? He scored 20 goals, didn't he, for Verona this year?
All right, let's move on to listeners' questions. I've got several here. Let's start with a guy called Tevroy Richards at Richie_TJ. He asks, Schneiderlin or Khedira for DM role? Start with you, Jasper.
I fancy Khedira, German international, Schneiderlin. Where is he? I think he's decent for Portsmouth, but he never really caught my eye that much. I'm not really sure why we're being linked with him. I'd be surprised if we were, but he didn't stand out that much for me. So Khedira.
Okay, Andrew.
Oh, so I'd go with Khedira as well. I think Schneiderlin's obviously got more of a defensive fortitude about him. But, the kind of the experience and the quality that Khedira would bring to that team would just be immense.
Okay. All right. Tim.
I think that the reason that Khedira makes it there's many reasons why Khedira makes it to the top of the list, but the one I was told was because he has a good close friendship with Ozil, who didn't settle well, and that would be an additional factor. Now, I don't know whether or not it's a good idea to start buying players because they fit with other players, whether that's exactly what you do or whether it's pandering and kind of chasing after the wrong problem. But given that it would go down immensely well with Ozil and the quality of the player that he is, I would lean that way and pick Khedira over Schneiderlin. I also just see that it's just the name that created all the excitement last summer when Arsenal went over, and I think I suggested it on one of your programmes, is Lars Bender back in the frame. There will be that kind of player. There will be that kind of player brought in. And sometimes what Arsenal and other clubs do is they throw out more than one name so they can create a detour, but also because they're negotiating with clubs as well and they want to look like they've got options. I suspect Khedira is the most likely, but let's wait and see.
Robbie.
Khedira will be huge. By the way, I forgot who you said first. Be careful how you go to Southampton, because he said Schneiderlin playing for Portsmouth.
Oh, sorry, that was me. Yeah, I meant Southampton. Blimey.
That could be a very serious mistake down there for Southampton.
Yeah. I'm not going there anytime soon, luckily.
But no, for me, it's got to be Khedira. Champions League experience, German international. We've got a load of Germans in the team, not just Ozil. Yes, there is a close relationship that he has with Ozil, but remember we've got Mertesacker there, Podolski there. The whole German factor. So he would fit in perfectly into the team. And to me, that would be just as an important signing as signing Sanchez.
Do we know what happened to Martinez? Sorry, because it was just before we obviously, John Cross, I think, at the AST event we went to a couple of months ago, Tim, John Cross said that we were looking, and obviously Giles, it was Schneiderlin, Martinez and Lars Bender were the three he said Arsenal had told him they were looking at. And I know obviously there was a big piece in the Telegraph about how we put in a bid for him the day before the season tickets renewal came open. That's completely died down now as well, isn't it? With him, and obviously he'd be a fantastic signing.
That would be fantastic as well.
Indeed. All right, let's move on to the next question. It's it's basically these two guys have asked the same question. So it's Poldy is that guy is at Abdul TZ and at Andrew_ASC have both asked, basically, if we do get Sanchez, do we use him as a wide forward or a main striker? Robbie?
I would like to see us use him as a main striker. I would like to see us try and make him into a Suarez or a Aguero. And also, obviously, be able to interchange across the three with Theo Walcott. So, yes, but I would like to see us try and turn him into a main striker.
Okay, cool. Andrew?
I think that they'll probably... I can't see them buying another main striker, unfortunately. And, I think that we need to get an improvement on Giroud. I think that, he'll probably play him in both roles. I think that, he's not going to be the main striker. I think he will play on the left, but they probably will use him there at times. And obviously, they're going to have to rotate with, they're not going to want to let Kafula rot on the bench, are they? So.
Okay, cool. All right. What else have we got here? We've got, another question is, we've already answered that. Basically, the guy's asking what does Tim know about the Sanchez situation. We've already gone through that one. Okay, last one is from Pers Venson at Nature League 1980, and he asks, will Wenger play beach footy after his Arsenal career? Tim.
I played footy on that same bit of beach, although not at exactly the same time. I was in the same hotel and restaurant areas as him once or twice. Look, why he enjoys football. I don't see any problem at all with him being out there at the World Cup, mixing with football people, thinking about football, talking football. Manchester United have got their manager, subsumed in dealing with a national team. The issue of us, how we sign players, has got nothing to do with his location. It's all got to do with his mindset and the club and the people around him. Good luck to him to play football in whatever capacity he wants when he's not at Arsenal anymore.
Cool. All right. Cool. Okay, let's move on to the Puma launch. Yesterday, the Arsenal ladies officially donned the new Puma kit in their league game. Was it a cup game? I think a couple of weeks ago, Sports Direct had the new Arsenal kit up for sale. Then they took it down for mysterious reason. A couple of people got the new Arsenal kit, posted it on Twitter. In China, a few weeks before that, or a couple of weeks before that, it was launched in China somewhere. Tim, what's the official line on this Arsenal Puma launch? Is it the 10th of July, or has it actually come out? Is it different launch dates in different countries, different parts of the world?
I don't actually know in terms of different parts of the world. I think what's happened is they've had what you might call a corporate announcement, which was the beginning of the month, and then you actually have a product launch, which takes place in a few days' time, and I'm sure it will spread out, around the world. From my initial look at it, looks absolutely fine. They need to get copies over to Arsene Wenger quickly because he's still using his Nike kit when he goes out for dinner. Maybe airlift or FedEx a copy out to him. The only thing I haven't seen yet, and you guys might have picked up on because I was away, is are they going to have free kits every single season? Because Arsenal used to have a charter against that, so that we only changed the main home and away kit every other year, so that people with kids and people didn't have the expense of always buying the kit. And I suspect we now move to a situation where it will get rotated more often, which I think is a shame and is just another example of this commercialisation that comes in, to football. And if we are going to have it and we are going to sell more, sell our soul for more money for the kit, then at least let's get out there and spend it on some players so the fans get some heroes they can put their names on the back of the shirt. But I have to go and look up and see what they've done on that regard.
Jasper, will you be buying a new kit?
Nah. Nah, I don't think so. I haven't bought a kit for a while though. I'm not really that sort of shirt buying type. I think the last one I've got is the blue one with the white pinstripes, which sad enough I put Arshavin on the back. So that didn't go well. So yeah, I do like the fact that we've changed to Puma and they make nicer kits. So I might think about it, but like everybody else, I want to see if they buy some players first. I'd love to get a shirt and put a brilliant name on the back like Sanchez. So you never know.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, I don't know really what to say about it.
Mate, at £30 million, we can be sponsored by Lecoq Sportif for all I care. A kit's a kit. As long as it's red and it's got the badge, who cares, really?
Indeed. And then finally, Robbie, what's your take? Will you be buying the new Puma kit?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I've actually seen the kit in the flesh. Top secret, but I have seen it, and it is very nice. The only thing I would say that I think might get picked up a little bit of criticism is that if the red is not as deep a red as the traditional one, it's just more sort of an orangey red than, you know, red, the red that we currently have. But it's nice. And also when I saw the kit, I was, you know, it's one of these tight fitting Puma kits, but I think those are for the players. That's how they're going to make it for the players.
Are they the limited edition ones? Did they say they said they was going to bring out some limited edition Super E-Fit or whatever they called it, didn't they?
Well, I won't be buying that one because that won't.
I saw the official Puma Twitter account said that there was no beer belly prejudice for the fan shirts.
So I'm all right then, am I?
But the one that I saw is the really tight fitting one for the players. That basically they reckon it's got this technology in it that allows them to breathe better, etc. But I've only seen the home kit, and my view of it is that I thought it looked quite nice. They've stuck obviously to the traditional red with white sleeves, so I think people will like the kit. And you know, it's just made me laugh though that it's all supposed to be so secret and it's all over the internet, everywhere. Like you said, Sports Direct leaked it. Everyone's seen it already. So
exactly,
you know. But I'm not. The only I've seen 3 kits. There's the yellow one, the away one that looks nice.
And
the interesting
blue and green thing, isn't it?
I've seen also like a third kit is like a blue.
Yeah,
blue stripy one. I'm not sure about that one. I'll have to get a better look at that before I have a decision on that one. But so I like cool stuff, and on the whole, I think the kit looks nice. But like you guys said, it's all what I want to put a decent name on the back. That's what, and I think that's what every fan wants to do.
So as Tim asked, I mean, do you know if that's an actual third kit going forward? They're going to be using. I
understand that they are going to have 3 kits. That they're going to be launching 3 kits. I don't know if they're going to launch all 3 straight away. But I understand that they will have 3 kits. Whether they're going to change those like every year, I don't know. But I know from what I understand, there are 3 kits. There's the red one, the home one, there's a yellow one for away, and then the third kit is like from what I've seen is like a blue kit with blue stripy one. So,
okay. All right. Go on, Andrew. Did you want to make a point? Or?
No, as I said, the blue one looks a little bit like. Do you remember the shirt we had? I think it was 1996, the away one. It reminded me a little bit of that. It's a bit odd. I think it's not my.
The lightning stripe, was that the one in there?
Yeah, that was the one.
I had that one. But it reminds me. I mean, the colours remind me of it. I think Tim, you probably remember this. The green and blue. I mean, the design isn't the same, but the colours are green and blue. That was one-off kit. Is it 1982, 83, or 83, 84, something like that?
I think it was 82, 83. It was in UEFA League that year. I quite liked it.
Yeah, it's very it's not everybody's cup of tea, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it was quite an interesting, different kit. Just the last question then, before we call it a day, is the 10th of July, which is Wednesday, is the launch date. Are we going to see a brand new signing launch the kit? Guys, I'm going to start with you, Andrew. What do you think?
I'm sceptical, mate. We were saying the same thing last year with the whole audacious stunt, weren't we? But I mean, I don't think the club are going to try and rush a signing just for the launch of a kit. If it happens, it'd be nice, but I don't think that's the priority. If they can save a couple of million off a deal by slowing it down, well, they've got politics. I don't think they're going to be too worried.
Okay, Jasper?
Nah, they'll put Diaby in it and say it's like a new signing.
Joe Campbell.
Tim?
No, it's not Arsenal style, and it's probably not practical. And in effect, the kit is launched anyway now, isn't it? Really, I mean, what is there still to come? You know, here it is, come and buy it. So I'd be I'd be very, very surprised. Maybe a few photos on the web page, but I don't think there'll be anything more than that.
Robbie, we've already beaten Liverpool to one of our big signings of the summer. We've already got a goalkeeper called Hugo Cato, or Hugo Cato.
Cato.
Yeah, Cato. Do you think he'll be the one to launch the Puma kit on Wednesday?
No, Balotelli's going to be stepping out.
Oh, there's another name, isn't it? Balotelli.
That's another striker for you,
yeah,
another
exactly.
striker out there. But I agree with these guys. I mean, I've had so many people saying to me for weeks and weeks and weeks that the signing will come with the launch of the new Puma kit. I agree with Tim. It's just not really Arsenal's style to do stuff like that. Maybe Chelsea and that, but Arsenal, they'll do everything in their own time. Maybe they should have launched the kit at the end of the summer transfer window.
We've already got a couple of big Puma players anyway. Giroud, I think, is Puma, and Fowler's Puma, Arteta's Puma.
Arteta's Puma, isn't it?
Yeah, they've got enough there if they want to use players. But
yeah.
I think, was it a couple of years ago when we did the Nike shirt, we already had Podolski and Giroud wrapped up, but we didn't use them at all, so I can't see it.
The thing as well, remember that they can use people like Wilshere, and those names will sell those shirts all day long as well. Wilsheres and Ramses and people like that. So
yeah,
I don't think that's a priority for Arsenal. Although it would be nice to see Sanchez rolled out for that. That'd be beautiful.
Indeed. All right then, fellas. I'm going to thank you all for coming on. Thank you goes out to Tim.
Thank you.
Is there any more AST meetings due this summer?
Yeah, there will be, but probably not until August. So, but members will get the news of that when we set one. We haven't fixed anything yet. We'll have a bit of a break.
Okay, cool. I'm going to say thank you to Andrew for coming in short notice. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Robbie for coming in late.
Sorry.
My old mucker, the original podcaster, Jasper.
You're welcome,
nice to have you back on again, man. You're right.
Yeah, good, mate. You're welcome.
Good, man. All right, so that's been an Arsenal Fan TV podcast. My name's Giles, wishing you all a great week, and keep it Arsenal. Boom.